For 6 years of marriage, my husband Mark, our 4-year-old son, and I lived in this bustling, yet indifferent city. Before marriage, I worked at a well-known multinational consulting firm, wearing tailored suits and high heels, navigating skyscrapers with ambitious career plans. I reveled in the intellectual challenge and financial independence. However, the arrival of our son changed everything. My mother-in-law had been in poor health for over a decade, paralyzed and bedridden, requiring long-term care. And my own mother, far away in another state, seemed to always center her life around my brother, who is 8 years younger than me, never considering coming to Chicago to help. So, under the immense pressure of family responsibility, I had no choice but to resign and become a full-time homemaker. Those years were lonely and long. Mark left early and came home late every day. As a busy civil engineer, he was always physically and mentally exhausted when he returned. Our communication dwindled, and besides the child and bills, we seemed to have nothing else to talk about. My entire life revolved around my son's diapers, baby food, and endless crying. I looked at my increasingly haggard face in the mirror, while my once radiant colleagues shared promotions, travels, and parties on social media. A strong sense of loss and being abandoned by the world gnawed at me. I yearned for change, for a way to rediscover my worth. When my son finally started kindergarten, I practically rushed back to the workforce, finding a marketing job at another company. Breathing the office air again, a mix of coffee and printer ink, I felt reborn. However, after several years out of the corporate world, I found myself a bit out of sync with my surroundings. To integrate into the new team as quickly as possible, I started frequently attending gatherings with colleagues, treating them to meals, drinking, and chatting, trying to rebuild my social circle. The seed of tragedy was quietly sown during one such gathering. On a Friday night in March 2024, our department had a get-together at a trendy bar. Amidst the loud music, I saw a young colleague named Chloe intently staring at her phone. The screen was flashing with colorful lights, occasionally emitting victorious jingles. She suddenly let out an excited squeal and held up her phone to us. "Look, I won another $200. Curious, I leaned in. It was an online slot machine game interface, lavishly and dazzlingly designed, full of various gems and mythological symbols. "What's this?" I asked. "Online casino, Emily." Chloe's eyes sparkled. "It's super easy, much more convenient than going to Vegas. You can play anytime, anywhere, and new users even get free credits for signing up." She enthusiastically showed me how to operate it, how to bet, and how to choose different games. In her words, it seemed less like gambling and more like a fashionable, exciting pastime. At her urging, with a no-harm-in-trying mindset, I downloaded the app. Using the complimentary $50 credit, I cautiously pressed the spin button. When 3 identical symbols aligned on the screen, accompanied by an exaggerated jackpot sound effect, $150 instantly appeared in my account. In that moment, a long-lost, pure rush of excitement coursed through me like an electric current. It was different from the satisfaction of work. It was the euphoria of unearned wealth, as if blessed by Lady Luck. From then on, that little icon took root on my phone. At first, I'd just play a round or two on the subway during my commute or during lunch breaks, treating it as mere entertainment. And my luck was surprisingly good. I won far more often than I lost. Winning $80 today, $150 tomorrow. Though not much money, the feeling of effortlessly earning it completely intoxicated me. I started using this extra cash to buy things I usually wouldn't dare to, a designer lipstick, an expensive lunch, or a Lego set for my son that Mark would deem too pricey. These small luxuries made me feel like I was regaining control of my life, compensating for the financial freedom I lost as a full-time homemaker. I prided myself on my good luck and skill, even developing the illusion that I was smarter than others, that I had found a secret code to wealth. However, fate's gifts are always marked with a price. Good luck couldn't last forever. Gradually, I started losing more often. At first, it was just small losses of a few tens of dollars. I didn't care, thinking, I'll win it back on the next spin. But things began to spiral out of control. The amounts lost went from tens to hundreds, then to thousands. Each time I lost, a strong sense of resentment and anger would seize me, compelling me to put in more money to break even. I started staying up late, hiding in the bathroom, or in the dark bedroom after Mark fell asleep, my eyes glued to that small screen. The whole world vanished, leaving only the spinning patterns and constantly changing numbers. I was no longer playing for entertainment. I was fighting to reclaim the money that should have been mine. In just over 5 months, that frenzied gambling spree revealed its ugly true colors. Not only did I lose the initial $8,000 I had won, but I also gambled away all $25,000 of the savings I had painstakingly accumulated since returning to work. As I stared at the near-zero balance in my bank account, a cold panic gripped me. This meant I was not only broke but also $30,000 in debt to my friends, money I had borrowed from them under various pretexts after my savings were depleted. In total, over $60,000 in wealth had simply vanished with the clicks of my fingertips. I didn't dare tell Mark. Our marriage already had a deep rift, and at its core was money. Mark was extremely frugal, even stingy. Perhaps the poverty of his childhood left too deep a mark on him. He had an almost obsessive desire for financial control. We practiced separate finances after marriage. Except for the years I was a full-time homemaker when he covered household expenses, as soon as I had an income, almost all the daily household expenses and our son's costs were borne by me. He meanwhile contentedly saved his salary, calling it for the long-term future of the family. I remember one year for my birthday, my first birthday after returning to work, I was overjoyed and wanted him to celebrate with me. I deliberately picked a dress online for nearly $400 and sent him the link, joking, "Honey, will you get this for my birthday gift?" His reply poured cold water on me. He didn't directly refuse but sent a long lecture. "Emily, we have a child now, and we can't spend money as freely as before. You need to learn to be thrifty and manage the household. Our child will need a lot of money in the future. After-school activities, private school tuition, college later on, and we'll also need to help him with a down payment for a house and wedding money. Which of these isn't an astronomical sum? Is it really necessary to buy such an expensive dress? A $50 one works fine." That day, I deleted the dress from my shopping cart, and my birthday joy evaporated. I consoled myself that he was doing it for the family, for our child. But looking back now, that was just a self-deceiving excuse. If a man's love for his family isn't reflected in his care and generosity towards his wife, then his so-called saving for the future sounds more like a selfish excuse. Precisely because I knew his character, I understood that confessing my gambling losses to him would be tantamount to detonating a nuclear bomb. He would not only refuse to help me pay off my debts, but would also cruelly crucify me on a pillar of shame with his most scathing words. I had no choice but to figure it out myself. So, I embarked on an even more dangerous path, online loans. Starting in September 2024, I frantically applied for loans on various online lending platforms. Those platforms, touting easy approval and fast cash, lured desperate people like me with enticing advertisements. I barely read the high-interest terms hidden in the fine print, just mechanically filled out information and uploaded documents. One after another, life-saving funds poured into my account, giving me false hope. I told myself this was my last shot. If I just won one big bet, I could pay off all my debts and return to normal life. However, casinos are best at devouring despair. By January of this year, the $35,000 I borrowed from different platforms, plus another $40,000 I later borrowed from several relatives under the guise of investments, totaling $75,000, vanished without a trace into the bottomless pit of slot machines. My total debt had accumulated to a staggering $100,000. This figure was like a mountain, crushing me. Debt collection calls and emails began to flood in like a tide, evolving from polite reminders to outright threats. I suffered from insomnia night after night, my dreams filled with spinning patterns and glaring red negative numbers. During the day at work, I forced smiles, pretending everything was normal, but only I knew that my inner world was a scorched earth. In despair, I thought of my mother. My father had passed away a few years ago due to illness, leaving her an inheritance of about $45,000. That was my last hope. I drove to the quiet town where my mother lived, fabricating a lie about partnering with a friend to open a creative restaurant, hoping she would invest in me. My mother sat on the sofa in her tidy little house, listening to my business plan, her eyes behind her glasses showing no ripple of emotion. She flatly shook her head and said in an unshakable tone, "Emily, are you crazy? The economy is so bad now. Opening a brick-and-mortar business is like throwing money into the water. Your brother is graduating from college next year. This money is what your father left for him to buy a house and get married. Not a penny of it can be touched. But I'm your daughter too." I couldn't help but shout, my voice trembling with emotion. "You're already married. Mark takes care of you. Your brother is different. He needs family support." Her words were like a cold knife, piercing the softest part of my heart. Since childhood, she had always favored my brother, who was showered with attention. My existence, it seemed, was merely to avoid causing her trouble. I stumbled out of my mother's house, the last bit of warmth from family extinguished in my heart. I was abandoned by the whole world. Just as I was being pushed to the edge by debt, Mark delivered the fatal blow. On a weekend afternoon in May of this year, Mark was in the bedroom on his computer, and our son was playing games on his phone in the living room. I accidentally glanced over and saw a message preview pop up at the top of the phone screen. "Hey Mark, what are you doing? Missing you," followed by a kissy face emoji. My blood instantly froze. I walked over, swapped my phone with my son's, and then, like a detective, I opened that chat box. My fingers trembled as I scrolled up, and explicit chat logs snaked into my vision like venomous snakes. The earliest records dated back to when I was pregnant. The terms of endearment like baby and dear, the details of their private dates, and a series of transfer records were clearly displayed on the screen. A $500 Valentine's Day red envelope, $5,000 transferred for the woman's birthday. The total added up to tens of thousands. So that was it. He wasn't frugal, he was just stingy with me. The money he saved on toys for our son, the money he saved on birthday gifts for me, he generously spent on another woman. That TikTok saying was right. A man who won't spend money on you isn't poor. It's because, in his heart, you're worthless. Anger and humiliation erupted in my chest like a volcano. I rushed into the bedroom, holding the phone like an enraged lioness. I slammed the phone onto the table in front of him. The screen was still on their last "I love you" exchange. "What is this, Mark? Explain yourself," I shrieked. Faced with undeniable evidence, he gave up defending himself, his face showing a cold indifference and impatience I had never seen before. "You saw it, that's what it is. When I was pregnant, when I quit my job for this family, serving you all like a nanny." My tears streamed down, mixed with all the grievances accumulated over 6 years of marriage. "You shameless bastard." I completely lost control and instinctively grabbed the ceramic ashtray from the table, throwing it at him with all my might. He dodged, and the ashtray shattered into pieces against the wall. "Are you crazy?" he roared, enraged. "If this marriage can't work, then divorce. Don't act like a shrew here." "Fine. Divorce," I said through tears. "But you have to compensate me. $30,000 as emotional compensation for your infidelity, and as financial compensation for my years of contribution to this family." At the mention of money, his face immediately darkened. "I don't have money." "No money? How did you have money when you were spending it on that woman? Sell the house and give me a portion." "You wish?" he flatly refused. "I paid the down payment for this house before we got married. It has nothing to do with you." That day's argument finally ended in exhaustion. We began a cold war, sleeping in separate rooms. I slept in the second bedroom with our son. We lived under the same roof, but were like sworn enemies. I knew in my heart that getting money from him would be like trying to take meat from a tiger's mouth. But I couldn't swallow my pride, so we remained in this stalemate. The difficulties of life and the betrayal of marriage, like two invisible hands, pushed me deeper into the abyss. Just then, an evil thought slowly began to form in my mind. In June of this year, my best friend Jessica hosted a birthday party. Jessica and I were former colleagues, with a deep friendship of 7 years. I witnessed her and her husband David's entire journey from dating to marriage and having children, and I was even a bridesmaid at her wedding. Jessica came from a well-off family, and David himself ran a sizable renovation company. He was handsome, wealthy, and doted on Jessica. The party was held at their lavish suburban mansion, filled with guests and clinking glasses. I sat alone in a corner, watching Jessica surrounded by admirers like a queen, with David standing beside her, his eyes full of adoration. His birthday gift to Jessica was a dazzling Cartier bracelet, eliciting gasps of envy from those around them. I looked at this perfect picture of happiness before me, then thought about my own messy life. Intense jealousy and resentment coiled around my heart like poisonous vines. Why? Jessica was not as attractive or physically fit as me, yet why did she have everything I dreamed of? And I, stuck with a cheating, stingy husband, also carried a massive $100,000 debt. Different people, different fates. This phrase now seemed so cruel. A crazy plan began to form in my mind at that moment. David, he was rich, and he seemed like a man who knew how to treat women well. What if I could make him my solution? Once this thought emerged, it was unstoppable. It was a mix of an extreme desire for money, a need for revenge against Mark, and an almost pathological jealousy of Jessica. The opportunity soon arose. At the end of the month, I learned that another mutual friend needed to renovate their house. I immediately offered to help, saying I could connect them with David to bring him business. Just like that, I naturally got David's private contact information. I started carefully chatting with him. I knew he was at his company during the day, so I chose work hours to avoid Jessica finding out. I used the renovation as an entry point, slowly guiding the conversation towards personal life. I leveraged all the communication skills I had honed in the marketing department, testing his boundaries with half-true, half-flirtatious jokes. He didn't refuse. Instead, he reciprocated my flirtation with interest. When the time was right, I began to confide in him. I tearfully recounted my misfortune, how my husband had cheated, how he was cold and stingy with me, spending all his money on his mistress, and how I endured humiliation for the sake of our child and family. I painted myself as a perfect victim, a fragile woman worthy of sympathy and pity. I knew that sympathy was the softest switch in a man's heart. Once flipped, many things would fall into place naturally. David took the bait. My story stirred his protective instincts and compassion. Our conversations became bolder and more private. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks of frequent chatting, we crossed the line. One weekday afternoon, he drove his black Porsche and took me to a very discreet motel on the outskirts of the city. In that cheap, dim room, I felt an unprecedented tension and a twisted sense of exhilaration. Afterward, I curled up in his arms and, in the most pathetic tone, borrowed $8,000 from him, falsely claiming that my online store, which I supposedly co-owned with a friend, was suffering severe losses and urgently needed funds for turnover. Borrow? He chuckled lightly, stroking my hair. We're like this, and you're still talking about borrowing? That's too formal. He immediately grabbed his phone and transferred $8,000 to me on the spot. Take it, baby, and let me know if it's not enough. When the phone chimed, seeing the extra money in my bank account, I was so excited I almost cried. This was the first time I had ever received so much money so easily from a man. This feeling of being treated generously, of being doted upon, was something Mark had never given me. In that moment, I felt all my risks and sacrifices were worth it. I even had the illusion that I had fallen in love with David, fallen in love with the feeling he gave me. However, the tragedy of a gambler is that any money in their hands ultimately has only one destination: the casino. That $8,000 was like a shot in the arm, reigniting my feverish desire to win back my losses. I felt I had David as a backer, and gambled with even more recklessness. I increased my bets, fantasizing about winning everything back overnight. The result, as you can imagine, was that the $8,000 was completely lost in just one night. But I didn't feel too bad. I was thinking that this was just the beginning. I needed to play the long game, bait a bigger fish. David was my long-term meal ticket, my ATM. As long as I could maintain this relationship, not only would my gambling funds be secured, but perhaps one day, he could help me pay off all my debts. We agreed that whenever we missed each other, we would find time for a secret rendezvous. I naively thought this secret relationship could last forever. I even started to fantasize that David might divorce Jessica for me. However, a secret can only be kept for so long. The retribution came much faster and more fiercely than I had imagined. July 12th was a day I will never forget. While David was showering at home, my friend who was renovating her house, wanting to confirm some design details with him, called his home directly. Jessica answered the phone. My friend said, "I sent some renovation-style pictures I liked to David's phone. Please tell him to take a look." Perhaps it was a woman's intuition, or perhaps just simple curiosity, but after hanging up the phone, Jessica picked up David's phone, wanting to see what pictures her friend had sent. However, what she opened was the pinned chat conversation between David and me. What happened next was like a nightmare. Jessica saw everything: our passionate sweet nothings, the $8,000 transfer record, the motel address we had been to, and the provocative selfies I had sent him. Everything she saw was like a sharp knife, just as it was for me when I saw Mark's chat logs with his mistress, each word tearing her world to shreds. Minutes later, my phone rang, showing Jessica as the caller ID. My heart sank, a premonition of ill omen. I answered the call, and immediately heard her hysterical screams and cries through the receiver. "Emily, you bitch. You whore. I treated you as my best friend, and you went behind my back and seduced my husband. How could you do this to me?" Her curses were sharp and piercing, filled with the pain and despair of being betrayed by the person she trusted most. My mind went blank, and I could only stammer, "I'm sorry, let me explain." But any explanation at this point would be weak and useless. Immediately after, she called Mark. My husband rushed into my room, his face ashen, his eyes blazing. "You really bring shame on me, Emily," he roared in a low voice. "Not only gambling, but also cheating. And with my friend's wife's husband. You've completely disgraced our family." Seeing his furious expression, a morbid sense of vengeful satisfaction actually surged within me. "You cheated? Now I'll let you taste what it's like to be cheated on." I knew his anger wasn't rooted in love, but simply because his pathetic male pride had been trampled. After cursing me a few times, he slammed the door and left, leaving me alone to face the coming storm. That night, the real judgment arrived. Jessica posted a public update on her Facebook page. She used the most sorrowful, most enraged words to detail how I, this venomous best friend, meticulously schemed to destroy her family. Even more devastating, she attached a single photo of me, one she had taken of me when we had afternoon tea together, where I was smiling radiantly. Now, that photo became a public testament to my crime. She didn't block me. She wanted me to witness my own humiliation. I refreshed the page, watching the comments and likes rapidly increase. Our mutual friends, some expressed shock, some comforted Jessica, and more were mercilessly condemning me. "I can't believe she's this kind of person. So disgusting. You never know a person's true heart." Every comment was like a needle, sharply piercing me. I tried to call Jessica, sent messages, begged her to delete the post, but they went into a black hole. I then tried to contact David, only to find he had already deleted and blocked me. Overnight, my reputation was ruined. The next day, my scandal spread throughout our entire acquaintance circle. Colleagues at work looked at me strangely, and friends who used to dine and chat with me now avoided me. Some busybodies even called to check on me, hypocritically asking what exactly happened. Worse still, my relatives and creditors who had lent me money, after seeing the Facebook post, severely doubted my character. They worried I would default and run away, and the frequency and intensity of their debt collection calls sharply escalated. I was completely isolated. My reputation was gone, my friends were gone, and my marriage had reached its end. In this situation, I no longer had any leverage to negotiate with Mark and could only agree to leave with nothing. I couldn't take my child, nor could I afford to raise him. My debts remained unpaid and had become even more problematic due to my ruined credit. I locked myself in my room, afraid to go out, afraid to see anyone. Chicago's prosperity no longer had anything to do with me. This city where I had lived for so many years now felt like a huge public courtroom to me. The only way out I could think of was to leave here, go to a place where no one knew me, and live in anonymity. It was all my own doing. Who else could I blame? From the moment I pressed that first slot machine spin button, I had already embarked on a path of no return. Every wrong choice, every moment of wishful thinking, snowballed, ultimately pushing me into the abyss of perdition.